everybody, Isabel Spradlin here, and today we are going to continue in our series of talking about abdominal adhesions and daily life, and the different ways that daily life can affect our adhesions, both good and bad and neutral, and the ways that abdominal adhesions affect our daily lives, which I think you're all pretty familiar with if this is what you're dealing with. So for today, we are talking about clothing and abdominal binders, or clothing as abdominal binders, a little bit of each. And this is actually something that I haven't really talked much about here on the website or in the programs, but it has come up for me in my practice and in my work with one-on-one people throughout this past year. It's come up often enough that I wanted to share it with you today. So what do I mean by a binder? Different people use binders in different ways. One of the first ways that this came up in my practice was around diastasis. So it's the separation that happens during pregnancy with the midline, this big tendon that's part of the abdominal wall and the muscles attached to it in the center. And then with the belly distension, the muscle distension during pregnancy, sometimes there's a separation there in the midline that then needs to be healed back together after birth. So that's how abdominal binders first came into my awareness many years ago. And then this year, I've seen a lot more clients using abdominal binders for adhesions. So I wanted to bring this into all of our awareness. So what I've seen is that often when people first start experiencing their abdominal distress, we all try multiple different things in order to address that distress. One of the things that seems to work well, at least initially for people, is to actually bind the belly in some way to help hold it in, especially if there's gut issues going on or there was a surgery for possibly bowel resection or some sort of repair, or maybe a bowel obstruction surgery of some sort. Oftentimes after those surgeries, it feels like there's this dragging sensation on the belly. And so sometimes what people do is use, I've had various people do it various different ways. Some people use a belt, like on their pants. They'll just cinch their belt tighter in order to get that sense of holding, of compression. And then sometimes people will use actual things that they tie around their waist in addition to the clothing that they're already wearing. So for example, they'll have a tie around skirt or things like that, and then they'll just sort of really bind on the belly in order, again, to create that compression and that feeling of the muscles, the contents of my belly are contained. So that can be really helpful for people initially to give that sense of containment and structure when the muscles of the belly are not, for whatever reason, able to provide that structure during that time. So a more traditional binder is sort of the binders that you see for post-pregnancy, which I've had at least, I think, 2 clients this year start to use as part of their abdominal adhesion work. And it's not this. This is just nice and bright colored and you can see it really easily. But those binders are generally wider. They'll come down over the hips, up to the ribs. And it's sort of creating that abdominal girdle. And these binders are flexible. So I would always recommend against anything that's not truly flexible. You still need to be able to get your belly expanding and contracting with your breath. But this is something that some folks this year in my practice have been using to help relieve some of the discomfort that's coming from their abdominal adhesions. So let's take a moment to talk about the pros and cons of this. Because the reality is that many of us, just in our daily lives, through the clothing that we wear, tighter pants maybe, or pants that cut into maybe the lower belly, so when we sit, there's that cinching when we sit into the belly, and this can happen with pants that come up higher, like navel height. Same thing, if it's cinching in when you sit, you know, there's a sort of an adjustment of the belly, of the abdomen, of the abdominal contents, and if you have that cinching mechanism in your belly, sometimes that can cause some distress over time. So one of the things that I want to be really clear about is that, as with most things like this, there is a time and a place for everything, and I recommend that if you start using a binder of any kind, whether it's just cinching your belt, trying to get your clothes to create that structure for you, or you're actually using a full abdominal binder of some sort, to remember that this is something that's going to help rebuild that muscle. It's going to help create that structure as you're rebuilding the actual muscular girdle of your abdomen. It's going to help temporarily as you release the adhesions and get your belly more comfortable and more functional in the long run. And I'm saying all of this because I really feel, at least in the cases that I've seen and the folks that I've talked with, that the abdominal binders are best used as a short-term strategy rather than sort of thinking about it for the rest of your life. Certainly, there are circumstances in which it might be a much more long-term, years-long, possibly the rest of your life situation, but I think that's going to be by far the lesser percentage. For the rest of us, it's really about the temporary creating that structure, that feeling of containment while we work on releasing our organs, releasing the abdominal wall, releasing the fascia and the peritoneal sac, all of that good stuff, building the strength not just of our abdomen, but also of our glutes and our legs, and using it as a temporary help rather than a long-term solution. So then let's talk about ways that we can use this to the binding, whether it's a belt or, you know, like I was saying, something tied around your waist or a full binder. Let's talk about how you can use that to your advantage for the short term in order to get that long-term relief. One of the things that I'll say right up front is if you are using the binder for any length of time, remember to come back to your hands-on work. And hopefully all of you at this point have at least watched and have access to the very first video of the series. It's part of the free tour. And then of course, if you sign up for the Recover program, you get all of this information. But in that first video, you really learn how to start engaging with the tissues of your belly in a constructive way. So if you are using your binder for any period of significant time throughout the day or night, please make sure that when you take it off that you're giving your belly that breathing room, you're doing your breathing exercises that we talked about in the last video, or in the first part of this series. Make sure that you're doing your hands-on to mobilize those tissues that may have gotten a little stuck with your binder throughout the day. So I understand that the binder can produce a lot of relief, but also if you don't release the belly after it being bound like that, it can also in the long run build more adhesions for you. So please be careful of that. If you're using your binder, we want to use it to the utmost degree that we can to get the most out of it and actively rebuild our bodies or help our bodies recover while we're using it, so that over time we can not use it as much or only use it when we're in a flare or, you know, in a much more temporary way. So there are some really great re-strengthening things that you can do while you are using your binder. And if you're a mom and you went through pregnancy, you know that sometimes it's recommended to kind of press in on your belly and then do little crunches with your belly to kind of hold, like I said, that with that diastasis. And even if you don't have diastasis, if you've just been through a surgery and your muscles of your belly are struggling to recover, this sort of compression with the little belly crunch, you know, and if you can do your Kegel at the same time, so gentle Kegel, holding the belly in and then doing your little crunch and then release. Sometimes this can be really great for rebuilding this muscular structure. Another fabulous thing that you can help yourself with is to rebuild your butt muscles and your leg butt muscles. And remember, your whole leg, so not just the tops of your legs, not just the backs of your leg, but the outside and the inside as well, making sure you're really building all of your leg muscles. This is where the support for our bellies and our abdomen comes from. So often we think about our posture as coming just sort of from the waist up, but what allows our posture to be upright is when our hips, our glutes, and our legs are nice and strong and can create the support so that we can stand upright and really engage but not overwork the belly muscles and all the way around the back. So another fabulous thing that you can do if you're using your abdominal binder is to have the binder, again, that light Kegel and then this very slight holding of the belly muscles. So this is not like a full-on crunch. This is just light Kegel, light engagement of the belly, and then coming down into a squat. The link for the squat information is below. I won't show that again because I've showed it in other blog posts, but making sure that you're really, of course, pushing your butt towards the back wall, knees are not coming forward of the toes. But the idea is that when you're doing this with your abdominal binder, it can actually help to strengthen and stabilize the belly as you are building the muscles of your glutes and your legs again. So the last thing I'll show you, because I love this very, very gentle exercise, I'm going to hold on to the very light medicine ball here, but you don't have to hold on to anything at all. You can just keep your arms here, and the idea of the structure of the arms is that it's just helping you keep your elbows tucked into your side, which means you're going to get you can see the rotation that you're doing. If your arms are kind of loosey-goosey, sometimes the shoulders will rotate, but not the abdomen, not the belly. So if you keep your elbows nice and tucked in as you are either holding air or holding your ball, and the ball just gives you even more of a visual, and even just this little bit of weight can challenge your muscles just a little bit more. So you might start here, and then as you've done this for a few days, just gently rotating side to side. And again, it's nice if you can do your light Kegel, very light abdominal contraction, and then your rotations side to side. This can really start to build the muscles that you are structurally trying to support with your binder, and then over time, the muscles can start taking on more of the work, and then hopefully you won't have to use your binder as much. So as you progress in that exercise, and you need a little bit more, then you can go ahead and start to hold on to your ball, and the same thing, just that nice, easy rotation from side to side. Again, I can feel the engagement of my belly, but it's not, I'm not getting that like, arr, I'm not trying to do crunches or super strong abdominal work. I'm trying to get the muscles of my belly firing and staying nice and slippery over the top of each other. We talk about this a lot, right? Okay, so these are some ideas for, try them out, see if it works for you as you are using your binder or not. So of course you can do these exercises even if you're not using a binder. And just please, one last reminder, especially if you're using a binder, after you take it off at the end of every day or at the beginning of every day, please, please, please use your hands-on work to mobilize those tissues that have been bound. Okay, so I hope that helps. I hope it gives you something extra to think about, and I will see you in our next installment.